Washington, D.C., 1814. 2 years into the bloody War of 1812. The American hopes for victory over the invading English army seem to be dying. And now, the unimaginable is happening. A foreign army is poised to enter Washington, D.C.
It was a very hot summer that year. The British forces were able to completely overwhelm the very young United States Army at the time, and they marched into Washington, D.C. President Monroe and all of the other politicians had left the capital, and at that time the British forces were finding it basically a deserted city. So they began to set fire to Washington, D.C., starting with the White House. And they were basically going to just burn down our nation's capital.
The United States of America, then just a few decades old, is on the verge of going down in flames. But then something strange happens.
That summer day was a very hot, sultry day. And at first they thought this would really help burn down Washington, D.C. There weren't any clouds in the sky. But suddenly the weather changed very, very drastically. Big storm clouds moved in. It began pouring rain. And then, suddenly, out of nowhere, this tornado formed, and it went straight at the British troops and forced them to retreat. And at the same time, the pelting rain put out all of the fires. And Washington, D.C. was saved.
History books record this as a stroke of incredible good luck for the Americans. But some ancient alien theorists believe that perhaps this was a UFO encounter, that it was an extraterrestrial intelligence that created that storm and changed the course of that battle, and perhaps of American history.
Is it possible that the storm that helped the United States win the War of 1812 was actually produced by extraterrestrials? And if so, were they trying to protect the fragile American experiment?
It's interesting to speculate that perhaps there was something about America that an extraterrestrial intelligence took interest in, whether it was freedom of religion, new ideas about democracy, about a republic, or something else that drew the attention of aliens and might have made them want to help this country become a success.
And I think that that would really be because the United States as a country was prophesied to exist in a sense. And the extraterrestrials very much nurtured this young United States and watched its growth very carefully. Like a parent watching a child growing up and being very protective of it too. And when the extraterrestrials saw this moment where the United States could lose this war and be occupied, they decided to step in and change history.
Could the mysterious sightings and strange incidents that have been reported throughout our history be evidence of America's extraterrestrial heritage?
Since the beginning of recorded history in North America, we've heard of these sightings. And we today, in our modern world, are re-encountering these same creatures. And you have to ask, are they the same beings? Are they the same creatures that have been seen for thousands of years, and now we're being asked to find a place for them in our world?
I'm totally convinced that the evidence makes it true, beyond reasonable doubt, that we are being reconnoitered by extraterrestrial civilizations.
And the big question is, why is this? My personal view is that there could be teaching us, trying to upgrade us. You know, we're a pretty warlike species. Possibly somebody from out there might want to try and harness and rein in our warlike abilities in the event that one day we head out there as well.
Charleston Harbor, South Carolina, April 12, 1861. At 4:30 in the morning, Confederate cannons fire on Fort Sumter. Three days later, President Abraham Lincoln declares that an insurrection exists and calls for 75,000 volunteers to put down the rebellion. The American Civil War has begun.
People on both sides assumed that there would be one great battle that would decide everything, the winner take all. One great battle fought somewhere probably between Richmond and Washington. But that doesn't happen.
People actually came out from Washington with picnic baskets and champagne to watch the battle. But this war would be a horrible war. A war that no participant would ever forget. Cost more American lives than all other wars combined. 750,000 people, it is now believed, perished during the war. Civil War was felt everywhere in America because it is that war that defines what type of nation we're going to be.
It was not just the future of the United States that was at stake. This was a war over different philosophies of government, with the fate of a people caught in the crossfire. And according to ancient astronaut theorists, there may have been even more at stake than we know. New York City, April 19th, 1861. Responding to President Lincoln's call to action, the 7th New York Militia travels by steamboat to Annapolis, Maryland. While en route, they witness a very strange occurrence in the sky.
While these men and sailors were on board, they saw what was described as the moon suddenly soaring clear into the sky, and around it, clearly defined, 3 circles of light. Now, of course, we know that it's not possible for the moon to change position in the sky that way. And looking at this sighting as it was reported, this would have to be classified as a UFO. If UFO sightings represent encounters with alien spaceships, then it seems certain that UFOs were watching over America during the Civil War.
Is it possible that the men of the 7th New York Militia really did have an encounter with some type of alien craft just days after the start of the Civil War? And if so, is it a sign that extraterrestrials had an interest in this turning point in our history?
There's an intriguing pattern that we see within UFO reports, and that's an increase in sightings when wars break out. First World War, Second World War, Vietnam, the Korean War, they all had their UFO incidents. And another example is the American Civil War.
It could be that aliens might simply be interested in observing historical events. It's also possible that extraterrestrials might be trying to influence the course of events or simply to warn people in some way.
While there were numerous UFO sightings reported during the Civil War, even more common are stories of soldiers encountering strange beings on the battlefield.
It happened all the time in the Civil War that soldiers reported seeing ghostly figures or ghosts of famous people. Soldiers reported seeing all kinds of strange things when the heat of battle was on.
also reported were bizarre dreams and premonitions, some of which proved to be prophetic. One of the most notable was published in a Kansas newspaper on March 27, 1862. According to the account, General George B. McClellan, chief of the Union armies, was visited in his sleep by the ghostly figure of George Washington, who warned him that Confederate forces were closing in on the capital. The vision reportedly caused McClellan to change his plans and fend off the attack.
There are many soldiers and politicians during the Civil War that have premonitions of death. Nathaniel Lyons at the Battle of Wilson Creek actually said, "Today I will die." And he is going to be shot in the chest during the battle trying to rally his men.
But what can explain all of these bizarre incidents? Ancient astronaut theorists suggest that the strange dreams and UFO sightings are evidence that extraterrestrials were, in fact, present in America during the Civil War.
It would seem that throughout the history of this planet, certain civilizations and nations have been watched very carefully by the extraterrestrials and nurtured by them. And in ancient times, this could well have been the Egyptians and the Chinese and the Sumerians. And really, in our own era, it's the United States of America that is the country that these extraterrestrials are the most interested in.
Jackson County, Missouri, 1831. 30 years before the Confederate cannons fired on Fort Sumter, marking the start of the American Civil War, Mormon church founder Joseph Smith brought many of his followers here, declaring this location to be the site of the New Jerusalem. He also stirred up controversy with his comments on slavery in this long-established slave state.
Joseph Smith, when he takes his Mormon colony to Missouri, he actually makes some statements about slavery. He talked that slavery issue would cause discord. He also came out and said that the slaves would eventually rise up against their masters.
Eight years earlier, Joseph Smith claimed that a strange figure named Moroni came to him in the night, enveloped in light and professing to be from the Pleiades star cluster. It was also Moroni who directed him to the golden tablets that would become the Book of Mormon.
Joseph Smith also reported that the angel Moroni continued to visit him, and 3 others amongst his congregation also reported similar visits.
According to Smith, Moroni appeared to him numerous times over the course of his life. And in 1832, he came bearing an ominous prophecy. On December 25th, Smith passed this prophecy on to his flock, stating, "Wars will shortly come to pass, beginning at the rebellion of South Carolina, which will eventually terminate in the death and misery of many souls. For behold, the southern states shall be divided against the northern states."
Now, there's some people that say this is a prophecy, this is a vision by Smith. Whatever way it was, it really did portend what came about in the 1860s.
What we're seeing is a human-looking being with brilliant light coming off of it who conveyed an intelligent message to Joseph Smith. There are some speculations that Joseph Smith was in fact visited by an advanced extraterrestrial being.
Did Joseph Smith really receive a prophecy that predicted the coming of the Civil War? And if so, How did an otherworldly entity know that the war would begin in South Carolina nearly 30 years in advance?
Is it possible that the angel Moroni, this perhaps extraterrestrial being, was very concerned about the Civil War, and that's why it gave Joseph Smith an advanced prophetic glimpse into what was coming? Was this another one of the efforts to intervene and to try to steer our history towards the most favorable outcome? Perhaps not just for us, but also for the extraterrestrials themselves.
But Joseph Smith is not the only person who is said to have been visited by an otherworldly being foretelling of a future civil war. Stories have emerged that during the American Revolution in 1777, George Washington had a similar encounter at Valley Forge.
The story is that while at Valley Forge, General Washington had given his men orders not to disturb him. And suddenly there's a being standing there. And this being is described as being extremely luminous. And next thing we know is this being starts giving Washington a prophecy about the future of America.
According to the story, this luminous being not only gave Washington a vision of the future United States, but also warned that the Union would be tested by civil war. Is it possible that both George Washington and Joseph Smith were visited by extraterrestrial beings who somehow knew that the Civil War would take place? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes. In 1933, Adolf Hitler rose to power and began consolidating Germany's military, political, and economic institutions under the control of his Nazi Party apparatus. For years, Wernher von Braun avoided becoming a member of the Nazi Party, but on November 12, 1937, he was commanded to join and did so.
To hear him tell it, he was had no choice. That it was either do that or face the same fate as everyone else who disobeyed the Nazis, certain death. Von Braun didn't think the Nazi movement was the way to go, but it was a means to an end to develop his rockets.
In 1944, with the help of additional funding from the German government, von Braun launched the 45-foot, 27,000-pound A4, later rechristened the V2, or Vengeance weapon. While von Braun's first rocket only reached 1.4 miles, the V2 climbed to an altitude of 108.5 miles and became the first man-made object to ever reach space.
The V2 rocket was a one-stage liquid-fueled rocket that was not comparable to any other rocket at the time because there weren't other rockets at the time. You had rockets in development. What von Braun was able to do with the V2 was combine the theory with the practical application and develop the first rocket ever to be able to reach space.
How was von Braun able to advance Germany's rocket program so far in just a few short years? Was it due to a desperate nation supplying him with massive amounts of money and material? Or could there be another reason? On July 1st, 1935, Hitler's SS commander, Heinrich Himmler, established Ahnenerbe, an elite Nazi institute that purported to research the cultural and archaeological history of the Germans. However, its true purpose proved far more bizarre.
Ahnenerbe was based on the idea that the Aryan race was the most directly descended from ancient, perhaps alien gods.
Part of their job was to literally go all over the world looking for special occult artifacts, things like the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail.
Von Braun became closely associated with them through his association with the SS and with Heinrich Himmler. And one of the main reasons for that was that they felt like rocketry was almost an arcane secret and a sort of black magic that would enable them to dominate the world.
As World War II broke out across Europe, Ahnenerbe expanded its research into secret weapons programs. And Himmler tapped von Braun as its technical director at Germany's large-scale experimental research facility at Peenemünde in northwest Germany. It was during these next several years that von Braun advanced the science of propulsion, aerodynamics, and rocket guidance systems beyond what anyone had thought possible.
You have to ask yourself, where would they have gotten that kind of knowledge so quickly? One of the possible reasons is that the Ahnenerbe, with their researchers, had actually discovered technology through some of their expeditions to find ancient relics, and their search really for ancient technology.
Is it possible that the Ahnenerbe discovered artifacts that helped them advance their weapons research? Some ancient astronaut theorists suggest that the Nazis did, in fact, recover something. Not from the ancient world, but from an extraterrestrial one.
A multicolored orb of light was seen in the sky in 1937 in southwestern Poland. And by all accounts, this was a UFO sighting, but it's a lot more than that. This orb actually crashed into the ground.
According to the account, when investigators reached the suspected crash site, they found a strange disc-shaped object. Nazi officials are said to have taken the damaged craft to a nearby secure facility, where it was examined by Germany's top aeronautical experts, including Wernher von Braun. While no remains of any alleged UFOs survived the war, German engineers did develop a series of revolutionary aircraft, including the first rocket-powered jet fighter, the first stealth bomber, and even anti-gravity-powered saucer-shaped vehicles.
From what we're able to glean today, Nazi technology at the end of World War II was so advanced that they had things that are still science fiction today. Anti-gravity, beam weapons, flying saucers, flying triangles, things that are still kept secret today.
In June 1945, U.S. Army officials holding German scientists reported that the Nazis were 25 years ahead of the United States in rocketry.
You have to wonder where this knowledge came from, and also whether von Braun, who was really the spearhead of all the Nazi rocket technology, if he had also gotten information from other sources, perhaps extraterrestrials, that helped him advance so quickly in rocket technology.